we doing, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Where the Game Lives On. You already know the official podcast of the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame and the Price Cutter Charity Championship, which still feels recent. It still feels like it recently ended, even though we're almost a month away, or a month past it now, I should say. I am your host, Noah Tucker. My co-host, Byron Shive, is joining me across the interwebs. Byron, how are we doing today, sir?
Doing okay. Good to, I guess, see you, for lack of a better term. We had a week off, and now it's back at it.
Yeah, so if you're listening, you probably don't notice, but if you're watching us on YouTube, things look a little differently. We're recording this episode remotely. As I mentioned, the Price Cutter Charity Championship here has recently ended, and now we're kind of in a little bit of a transition as we shift a little bit more back to our Hall of Fame stuff and kind of get ready for the second half of our year here. It's a good time for some of us to just kind of reset and, get ready for the events that we have coming up. I was in the office a little bit last week. I am out this week. Byron, you were out a little bit. How was your? You were kind of probably doing some business stuff too, but how was your vacation time per se?
Off for a week. I left for just a few days, and you brought in QB2 and Taylor. I mean, I think he stole the show last week, so I better bring my A game. I don't want you replacing me as a co-host. So.
I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. We kind of joked about a little Friday Night Lights reference with our QB2, but I told him, I said, you're not the second string. You're just kind of like you're the reliable backup, I guess. I don't know. It's just a special host, but good to have time off. Yeah, just relax a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, we didn't leave the state or anything. We spent. I actually got my garage cleaned out. That was an all-day project that I've been putting off for a while. So I mean, I'm not sure if that's much of a vacation, but. Just did some things around the house and, got some, I guess they call it a staycation, I guess is what you call it. But anyway, we had fun, spent some time with the family, went to Branson for a few days and did a couple of things down there. So,
yeah, I guess I've had a little bit better luck than you. You were off last week and the weather was hot and stuff. Yeah. And then I've had a couple of good days here.
Sounds like you've been on a golf course. Yeah.
I have. Yeah, no, I've been playing a little golf. I'm trying to take a little break. I don't know, I guess staycation, that is the term everybody's using now. Just kind of relaxing and getting my mind off of things. But yeah, I've played some golf, but trying not to, overdo it or anything.
I always was under the impression a staycation is when you stayed at home. But I've had people, when I use that term, tell me that a staycation is when you go stay at a hotel at where you live. And so I didn't do that. So I don't know what the proper definition is. I stayed at my own house in my own bed, just didn't go anywhere. So
yeah, I don't know if I'd like to stay in a hotel in Bolivar, Missouri per se, but I guess maybe if you go to Branson, or maybe if you go out to a casino on the western part of the state.
We have hotels in Bolivar, Missouri, Noah.
They do, yeah. You've got the university up there and stuff, but I guess I'm not even doing a staycation then per se, just kind of hanging out at home. I've been busy with just a couple other things. I've been playing a little slow pitch softball. We're getting ready. Yeah, we're getting ready for the
glory
playoffs.
Days. Yeah, they pass me by, glory days.
Love it. Yeah, no, we're getting ready for the playoffs, and so I'm trying to get everybody ramped up to make sure that we take care of business. We secured the 1 seed. We were the top placer in the regular season, but that doesn't matter now. It's it's what have you done for me lately?
So I guess what's worse, the slow pitch softball guy or fantasy football guy? Which guy is worse that you'll not want to hear from?
I don't know. You can have
my
people...
slow pitch career ended a long time ago. After I had my daughter was born, my wife pretty well informed me I was too old to play softball. So
there you go. That's too bad. You know what? I don't know who it's worse to hear from, because either one, people can just go off about them. I guess maybe at least if you're playing fantasy, you're living through actual athletes, yes. and their success. Yes. Whereas it is glory days with the rec league stuff. But
well, see, I played slow pitch softball long enough that when I started playing, I was an outfielder. Then I got moved to the infield because I couldn't run fast enough, and I ended my career as the pitcher. So,
oh well, hey, I feel like pitcher's an important position. you got to have a good pitcher if you want to have
That's
a
where
good
you
team.
put the old guy that gets the team together. So
Yeah. I don't know. Everybody's a little different. I know basketball guys, they'll play as long as they can get up and down the court, which
yeah.
for some isn't as long as others. But
The crafty YMCA guy, yes.
Nate Angus said that we had him on a few episodes ago. If you want to go back and listen to that episode, he said that he was, he got into golf, but was always kind of primarily a basketball guy, and then picked up golf again later in life whenever he realized he's like, man, I'm getting a little too old to play basketball. But I'm curious, what's your opinion? Whenever you're talking about rec league and still kind of living out the glory days, when is it time to hang it up per se?
I don't know. See, I was in college for a long time, longer than 4 years, shall we say.
The scenic route.
I took the extended scenic route, yes. So I played, of course, all the intramural sports in college. And so when I got out, I played slow pitch softball. I even played in a men's flag football league, probably not too long. I say not too long ago. It's been a long time, actually. So I've done a little bit of all the rec stuff. When is too late? I don't know. I think as long as you can do it without injuring yourself. I mean, I do have a torn quadricep from my softball days, so I don't know. I don't think there is if you can play. So
yeah. So what I'm hearing
is more of a time thing. So.
Yeah, what I'm hearing though is the trophy case in your office is full of It's full of the intramural trophies from back in the day.
I won 15 intramural titles back in my extended career. So
not keeping count.
I own a T-shirt that says intramural All-American, or intramural Hall of Fame. So I may wear that for a podcast sometime soon.
I love that. Some of us don't make the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame. We have to settle for the intramural Sports Hall of Fame. Yeah, interesting. Well, that's the good thing though about golf, I guess, is it's a lifetime sport, and I think golf people don't like me saying this, but it is kind of an old gentleman's game, an older man's sport in some sense. That's obviously not the case with the guys that we saw out at the Price Cutter Charity Championship. Sure. Those dudes can absolutely play. Shout out to Pearson Cootie, by the way, what did he get this past weekend?
He won the Price Cutter Charity Championship back on July 23rd, which was his second victory of the season on the Corn Ferry Tour. And then this week in Utah, finished tied for sixth, which vaulted him up the points list to a point where he is guaranteed a spot on the PGA Tour next year. So he earned his tour card this past week. So he is quote unquote #tour bound.
Bound, yeah.
He is. It's pretty cool that we have and honestly, he's fourth on the list. Number 3 is Ben Silverman, the 2017 Price Cutter champion, who is also tour bound. So we have a couple former champs from the Price Cutter that are headed to the tour next year. So it's
and
cool.
we like to say that we stay unbiased and whatnot, but we definitely keep tabs on those former winners whenever they're at the next level, because it's always cool to see them have success here and then go on and potentially have success later and be like, hey, we got to talk with him, we got to meet him, he won our tournament and had a great 4 days in Springfield, Missouri. So we can keep on rolling here, though. Now that we're moving away from the tournament, obviously, like we've mentioned, we kind of have this transition period as we get ready for more Hall of Fame events and stuff. What kind of excites you about just the latter half of our schedule?
Well, and that's kind of I had the staycation. That was the hardest thing all week. It sounds weird, but converting my brain from working on the golf tournament for 2 months straight, 24 hours a day, and now it's over, and so we have to refocus upon the Hall of Fame. It was difficult kind of doing that, but excited. We have a lot of great things still on the back half of the year. We have our Stan Musial Hall of Fame Championship is coming up at the end of August, which is the quote unquote elite event on the Hall of Fame schedule, where we'll get up to Old Kinderhook for a couple of days and have some Hall of Famers coming in, some celebrities to play with some of our sponsors, and it's an overnight event where they're paired with a team of 4, and we have a nice banquet and auction and spend the night and get up and play some golf. But that's coming up at the end of August, and we have some other Price Cutter events on the schedule. But we actually today I received the list from the nominating or selection committee for our fall Hall of Fame luncheon that's coming up on October 18th. So I get the pleasure here in the next few days of making some phone calls and some congratulating some individuals on their induction into the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame. We won't announce anything yet because we have to confirm that they're available first, but we're excited about that class coming up in October.
Certainly, and we've talked about that before briefly. It's always a fun thing, especially that you get to do as a part of this job, is make those calls to those individuals to notify them that the selection committee has actually given them, that honor of being, inducted into the Hall of Fame. But yeah, it's, that's one thing. And then, you got to make sure you stay tuned because we will, in the near future be releasing that class of inductees. But then after that's done, we've got something else and we've got a few price cutters. There's always something that's going on for us, even when we're, in our downtime or our transition time right now. Another cool thing we've got going on is just, the continued renovations we have. If you haven't been aware, the Hall of Fame Museum itself has been closed as we've kind of been in the early stages of this renovation period. I know I didn't see them myself. I think you have, though. We got some renderings the other day, though, which is that's kind of cool.
They came in, the initial renderings from the architects came in right before the price cutter tournament. So they were kind of on the back burner for, a few weeks, but I actually got to meet with the architects yesterday and go over some things. And it's very exciting. Obviously, you want to speed the calendar up and fast forward to when everything's finished. But there's a lot of decisions that still need to be made. Obviously, our Hall of Fame governing board will meet here in a few weeks, and that'll be a major topic of conversation and kind of presenting different options and routes to take. And obviously, the board will weigh in and give us direction on which way we're going to go. But it was just really cool to kind of see what this place can be. Obviously, it's been a place over the years for people to come and see some Missouri sports history. But our mission, as we've said before, is to promote or preserve Missouri sports history, inspire the future, and we want to have a place where people can come and learn about Missouri sports history, but do it in a fun and exciting and interactive manner, and to the point where when they leave, there's reason for them to come back. They had so much fun to come back. It'll be different each time they come, but they learn something new each time about these. We talk about the inductees, coming up in October. Well, all of those 1,000 plus that we've inducted in the past that we get a chance to promote here. But very exciting future. And like I said, I wish we could fast forward, but don't want to wish it all away either.
No doubt. And, for those that don't understand, kind of from our perspective, it's something that's really exciting for us because the Hall of Fame has done so many things right for so many years and has produced this well-oiled machine as an events-based organization. And now, looking at that from the other side of the coin, it's kind of the first time that we're really going to see some changes happening to the actual Hall of Fame, the physical building itself. And I'm just, excited to see, like you said, what that looks like when we get to the finish line. But there's a lot of things to be done, between now and then. Whenever you kind of look at the plans, we've discussed several different things on this podcast. Whenever you see the renderings or what it may be, what's kind of your exciting thing or one thing that stands out to you right now?
I mean, just there's a proposal to expand the facilities and add additional space. Obviously, doesn't really benefit the fans that come here, but additional office space for us. It could even include a podcast studio of all things, where we actually have a legitimate studio as opposed to your office, which has certainly served its purpose. But just being able to, I think, have the ability to add in some interactive. I for whatever reason, I've always discussed, can we recreate Payne Stewart's putt on number 18 at Pinehurst number 2 in 1999 as he won the U.S. Open, just months prior to his death. How cool would that be if you could come to the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame and actually, the same undulations on the green. There's other ideas where you can, go and sit down in a small enclosed studio and you put on the special glasses and all of a sudden you're at the 50-yard line of the Kansas City, at Arrowhead Stadium, and you're experiencing what that would feel like. It's realistic, and then all of a sudden you're at center ice for a Blues game. Just different things that we can I just look at it as being just a fun, like an adult sports fans play. Well, not even adult, because kids I think would enjoy it. Just a sports fans playground here at the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame. I mean, there's so much potential. So
No doubt, yeah, and it's an awesome vision, and definitely seeing some of that slowly start to come to fruition is very exciting for us. What we'll tell you is just make sure you follow us on our socials. Make sure you stay up to date on everything. We will keep you posted whenever big things are happening. We'll definitely showcase a lot of renovations when you can see stuff changes that are happening, and like we've mentioned, it will just be. It will be a process, and once we get to the finish line, I think we'll look back and be so excited. But it'll just take time,
yeah,
between now and then. So
absolutely.
we'll continue moving forward here. Shifting gears a little bit, obviously we're coming up into the second half of our year at the Hall of Fame, and fall is right around the corner. Believe it or not, it doesn't feel like it outside, but fall means football, and obviously football is a big part of what we do here at the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame. Certainly have had a lot of sports history in Missouri here recently with the Kansas City Chiefs and whatnot.
Yeah.
But more so, I think what we're seeing in the news here recently is college football. We talked about a little bit of the playoff expansion last week, and then all of a sudden you start seeing a lot of this. This conference realignment stuff is just
spent Friday just refreshing my social media, all because it seemed like things were changing by the minute on Friday with all the the Pac-12 imploding, and it was weird because Thursday you're reading that the Washington and Oregon were going to the Big Ten, and then I wake up on Friday morning and there's a report out that overnight there was a change and that there was renewed optimism that the Pac-12 is staying together. And then throughout the day, not only did they leave, but now you got Arizona State, Utah are jumping to the Big 12. It was crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I really just get the feeling of these athletic administration folks not wanting to be left out. They feel like this ship is leaving now and we have to hop on board or we're going to be in dead water trying to find a conference. I mean, I don't know how you feel, but with everything happening right now and the pace at which it's happening, it feels to me like the Pac-12 conference is just, we're seeing its last days almost.
I mean, the Pac-4 is essentially what it is currently. I mean, I don't know how it survives, with the name Pac-12. Obviously, you've got Cal and Stanford, I think, are two pretty high profile from an academic standpoint, elite academic institutions that surely are desirable. I'm not saying that the Ivy League is going to expand to the West Coast, but there's a couple of options, that are. But Washington State and Oregon State, I think, are the big losers in this, just because if I read correctly at some point during that Friday chaos, they were making about $35 million per institution a year from the Pac-12 deal. Whereas if they drop to, for instance, the Mountain West Conference, now obviously it can be renegotiated, but they're getting $6 million a year per institution. That's a pretty significant, almost $30 million, deficit that they would have to make up somehow. But so it's just, it's all money, of course. It's all driven by TV money, and it's almost like who blinks first. It's, you never know.
Yeah, it's interesting too, and you being a Florida State fan, I was sitting back looking at this like you, refreshing my social media feeds and everything, and I thought, man, the ACC, it's kind of quiet right now. And then all of a sudden you hear that there's early, and you don't know how to perceive it, but there's early discussions of Cal and Stanford possibly going to the ACC,
Yeah.
and you're like, hold, like that's not going to be the Atlantic Coastal Conference anymore. That's going to be the American Coastal Conference.
Well, and you say that, obviously I'm a Florida State fan. Well, Florida State, actually, they came out, I think it was last Wednesday, before all this stuff with the Pac-12. And basically, some people referred to it as saber rattling. They were basically talking about how, hey, we're not happy with our, amount that we're receiving from the TV revenue. We need to be making more. And they were kind of, quote unquote, throwing out the gauntlet of, we are looking. We're not saying we're leaving, but we're not saying we're not. And so that was a big story for Florida State. It was kind of like that was the story, and then all of a sudden the Pac-12 became the story. So Florida State is still hanging around out there, and at one point there was talk of Florida State and Clemson to the Big Ten, and there's still talk of the SEC adding 2 to get to 20 or whatever. And so I don't think that we've seen the last of it.
No doubt, yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds here in the coming days, coming weeks. Who knows how quickly it may develop, but I think in some sense when I see this, and obviously these organizations, this is a big part of what they do. They know what it takes, what needs to be done. But to me, it just feels like there's a little bit of aspect of kind of, jumping without looking over the ledge first. I mean, something that I thought of is we've got these teams now on the West Coast who are going to the Big Ten, which is now what, the Big 16 or whatever it is.
Big something.
But something I'm thinking of is a lot of these Big Ten teams that play up north, play near the Great Lakes, they don't play night games come November because it's so cold. Well, now you got teams on the West Coast who are going to have to play home games, who are going to have to play at night because of the TV deals, which means, collaterally, some of these teams are going to have to go on the road and play at night in November at some of these, in Michigan and Ohio. And it's like, I hate to say it, but some of these Southern California teams, I think, are going to have a rude awakening when they're not playing in nice sunny weather.
You're like most people. You're talking about football, and I think this week some of the comments that Coach Eli Drinkwitz at Mizzou had regarding the whole conference realignment, and his point, and I certainly don't want to put words in his mouth. I don't have the quote in front of me, but essentially he was like, "We know this is driven by money. We know this is driven by football, but what about the non-revenue sports? What about the college softball team from Oregon that's got to go play a game at Rutgers and then get back on the red-eye flight to Eugene, Oregon, and get up and go to class the next day?" I mean, that was essentially his comment: is did we give any consideration to these other collegiate athletes? We talk about being concerned about their well-being and their mental health and all of this, and so it's all driven, as I said, it's all about money. It's all driven by essentially football and TV deals. But what about these other sports?
Yeah, and I'm not going to sit here and say that Mizzou's head coach was the most outspoken about this so far, but he definitely did gain a lot of traction across media with what he said, and I think there's a point to be made. I mean, he's right. Football is king. It is its own entity and it's right. But there are these other sports where they travel a lot more frequently and there's a lot more strain put on those, student athletes. And in the same regard, speaking more so, I guess, to the university, it's almost feeling like it takes a backseat of priority to them because these are not the big money grabbers. These are not the people we're worried about because
he was, in my opinion, taking some unfair criticism of, people were saying, oh, well, Mizzou jumped from the Big 12 to the SEC. So how can you comment? Well, first of all, he wasn't there when that happened. And second of all, that's not the point he was making. I mean, Mizzou may have jumped conferences, but they were going from Columbia, Missouri to Tuscaloosa instead of to Lubbock. It's not like they were flying cross country in these, other sports, so to speak. And so I don't think it's an apples to apples comparison, but, his point is, certainly worth consideration. I mean, the bottom line is football drives the bus, so to speak, and it pays the bills for the majority of these institutions, even more so than basketball. Basketball still takes a backseat to football. That's what pays the bills, and so it's kind of what angle do you want to look at it from? But I think his comments were certainly worth consideration.
Yeah, no doubt, and like I said, it's going to be interesting to see how it continues to unfold. I thought it was interesting what he spoke about as well with, the transfer portal period ending. Yeah. And so now the student athletes aren't allowed to, transfer to a different school, but we have all these schools leaving and doing whatnot. And, like you said to Mizzou, geographically they have an advantage being somewhat in the southeast, but in the middle of the state or the country rather. And so I don't think it impacted them as much, and they were certainly well ahead of everything that we're seeing here recently. Oh, yeah. But I just think you talk about, there's so many different levels to it. I mean, you could talk about the impact on the student athlete, you could talk about the impact it could have on the university, but it just exceeds far beyond that. I think it can totally change the landscape, especially of college football and college basketball as we know it, just from a competitive level, with how playoffs are going to be looked at, especially in football. I think you're going to have automatic bids. We're looking at essentially, 3, maybe a 4th major conference, these mega conferences that are going to be had.
It's almost forming into, like you said, 4 conferences, and eventually are we getting to 4 bids from each conference and you got yourself a 16-team bracket? Who knows? But, as a sports fan, as a college football fan, would I rather watch Oregon at Penn State or, some other random game? I mean, obviously the matchups that this creates is certainly cool from a TV standpoint, from a sports fan. But I think the playoff, they say they're halting at 12. I think it's looking long term. It's probably going to wind up being 4 conferences. I don't know what the 4th conference looks like, but you're probably looking at 4 automatic bids from each conference, and there's your playoff. But
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, maybe we'll look back on it and say, that's exactly what college sports needed. We're not going to know. We're not going to know till we get down the line. And definitely, having been a former college athlete for a short period, that's kind of what I think about, though, is like, how's this going to just impact the regular run of the mill student athlete? Because I mean, I think we forget sometimes, especially with some of these other sports, that bring in all this money. It's like, hey, these are just kids.
yeah.
They're just kids. A lot of these young student athletes, this is their last time they're going to play a sport. They go become a doctor, or they go work in real estate. It's not like,
Well, and even being like you said, they're not going to play professional in their sport, and so they want to enjoy college. Well, how can you enjoy college when you're spending half your week on a plane flying to the East Coast or vice versa, and then you're getting up, you're going to class? How are you having a social life? How are you getting enough sleep? How are you, doing everything that a college kid does? I mean, you're pretty well taking a lot of that away now. People will counter that. Well, you're getting this and you're getting that, but there's a lot of factors that go into it. It's more than just, hey, we're getting X million dollars for this TV deal. So
yeah, and not to mention, on top of that, 99% of these kids are also actively pursuing a degree in their respective fields. It's like, you're asking a lot of these kids to just juggle a lot of different things. It's pretty tough. But I don't know. I don't think I don't want to sit here on a hot seat and say like, oh, this is getting out of hand. No, I think you just have to sit back, let all of the waves subside, and kind of see, once everything's settled, what kind of impact this is really going to have.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to be get off my lawn guy, or
I don't know. I think everybody loves to just make a quick reaction and have a really negative or positive opinion towards something. And I don't know. Like I said, we could be sitting here in 5 years and go, man, we had no idea how much that helped college athletics.
Yeah.
And maybe,
well, and I don't know. It hasn't been that long ago that Colorado jumped from the Big 12 to the Pac-12, and they just went back to the Big 12. So I mean, maybe Washington and Oregon get into this and realize, hey, this isn't what we wanted it to be. And then all of a sudden there's a new West Coast Conference or a Pac-12 Part 2 or something that join, who knows what the future holds. But I definitely, it's not over. I mean, I think that we're in the middle of it. It's not, there was a few years ago where it kind of settled down and everybody thought we were, kind of at the end of it. I mean, I remember back when the Big East was a basketball conference, and you had teams like Boston College and Syracuse that wanted to play football, that you had the Villanovas and the Georgetowns that really didn't have D1 football programs. And so all of a sudden you've got Miami jumping from the independent ranks to join the Big East. And I just read a story the other day where Florida State joined the ACC back in like the early 90s, and the SEC wanted Florida State then, and one thing led to another. Well, Florida State wound up in the ACC. Miami jumped to the Big East for football, and Louisville's been in the ACC, the Big East. I mean, there's just schools jumping every which way, and we haven't seen the end of it. I think it's just something that's going to happen until the dust settles. So.
Certainly, and we're like you all. We sit here and we try to make the most sense of it as we can in the moment, and then we'll kind of see what the ripples of that are. I can promise you this though: if it's happening, if it's going on, we're probably going to be talking about it here on the Where the Game Lives On podcast. We'll also be talking about all the things that go on here in Missouri and how it impacts Missouri sports potentially in the future. If you like what we do, be sure to give us a review. Leave us a like. Be sure to subscribe to all of our future episodes. We have new podcast episodes that come out every Wednesday. You can listen to them on Apple Podcast or Spotify. We also have video versions that come out on YouTube. We appreciate you joining us, though. We appreciate you listening as usual. Byron, you got anything for the folks?
I guess the only thing I would add is that if we have to do this again remotely, you need to get rid of that trash banner behind you. Just
Hey, Boomer Sooner, horns down forever, all right? Horns down. Anyway, we'll see you next time on another episode of Where the Game Lives On.